There he is.
Hello and welcome to episode 5 of VIP Productions Podcast with myself, Robert. And today, as usual, I'm with the man with the pencil, the Pokemon, the guy who decides all my fate, the man who's about as popular as Hulk Hogan is right now and probably twice as drunk. Welcome to the universe, Mr. JJ Johnson. How's your 2025 been?
Everybody, yeah, all good, mate. I'm not actually drunk right now, though. Potentially. But yeah, all good. How are you, mate? You well?
I'm coping with 2025. It's a freezing cold day, and I've been outside already, so I am a little bit shivering.
Happy days. Let's do this. Let's do it.
As usual, we run down what CWF has been done recently. Today we're going to look at the aftermath to At World's End. We're going to look at World's End itself. We're going to look forward to the future with I've completely forgotten the pay-per-view schedule.
We've got Day of Reckoning.
Day of Reckoning 8, and then possibly a little touch of Night of Glory.
Yeah, exactly. Where JJ will become the undisputed champion.
In a pig's eye.
Spoiler alert.
Oh, but yeah. Oh, we also have some interesting questions coming that have come in the past couple of days.
Yeah.
I mean, so let's have a quick run through of At World's End.
Did
we go over the card last time?
Go on, mate. Sorry.
I mean, I don't think we went over the card last time. So this was a 2-night event with 2 main events. I mean, we did predictions on it, but I don't think we. Let's cover the results.
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's roll.
Let's start with the pre-show. Mr. Enigma versus, the pre-show of night 1. Mr. Enigma versus Alejandro Suarez.
Yeah,
obviously Enigma clearly won this.
Yeah, it was. So Suarez was one of Saint's characters from when 6CW restarted in 2013. So I just thought, we'd kill him off.
And here you have it, murder on a podcast.
I mean, it was pretty much like a murder when you read it. Basically, it's just about introducing the character. Obviously, we've all seen KD, who is Mr. Enigma. I like the character. I like his promo style. It's just an introduction for him, really. It's never ever, when you have these pre-show kind of matches, it's never going to be anything, sort of it's not going to like set your world alight kind of thing. It's just I think he joined the week before, so we wanted to get him involved in something, but it was too late to get him involved in like a storyline.
Yeah, and now you're introducing him in some sort of storyline with Damian Andrews.
Yeah, I mean, what I went off was obviously I've seen his promos, I've read his character sort of bio, and it sort of struck me as we could go for the sort of gun for hire kind of character, and just given the background and stuff like that, so it kind of made sense for me, and I think it's a gamble. There's no slight on him. Same with the handler for Solomon Noir. I like what I've seen so far from their promo ability. So a lot of the time when we get new guys, you don't want to throw them into the deep end of like a major storyline, but kind of feel like these two can handle it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking through his character sheet right now, and it is in depth.
Yeah, very, very much so.
He's gone completely off. No offense to him, he's gone completely off the deep end.
Yeah, it's a proper. I mean, the guy says he's been using this character for 15, 20 years or something. So it's kind of, you can see where he's added to it over the years. I like it.
I mean, honestly, the one thing I'm curious about, this is not a knock on him. This is more my personal take on my personal style. The promo style he's got, it's a case of, I'm just at the end of it. I really just read his recent too, and I basically just gone, quote, it's at the Krusty GIF here. What the hell was that?
Yeah, so I think what
Sorry, it is.
Go, mate.
Sorry, it has gone basically like, I get what he's going for. I get what he's trying to do. It is literally, it's like a long-term, it feels like I'm reading a film when I want to watch a cartoon. Yeah. I'm not saying it should be a cartoon, I'm just saying it's just, there is an awful lot to pack in there. It's like when a cartoon decides to go heavy on a certain motive, and like, did you ever used to watch Static Shock as a kid?
No, I don't know what that is.
Basically, they covered it's cartoon early 2000s, and it covers one of the episodes was it covered racism,
right? Okay.
Involving the parents. That it went heavy on. There was one scene where it went heavy on that. And it just feels like it is that constantly with Enigma. It's the case of, I get it. I mean, yes, it's early doors, but with me, it's just a case of I want to see him in a back and forth. I want to see how he handles that, because and this is just me here. If he came at me with that, it's like, this feels like a one-sided street. It's like where one side's not paying attention to what the other's doing or stuff like that. I want to basically see him in the weeds and just completely take it out of his comfort zone. Because I enjoy what I may not get what he's writing, but I do enjoy it. I enjoy the passion he puts into it. But it's a case of I want to I want to see what it's like when he's thrown into a completely different environment.
Yeah. See, it's hard though, isn't it? Because a lot of these guys now, I don't know for definite with Enigma and Solomon, but I get the feeling. I've not actually asked them outright, but I get the feeling that they're American. Given the times that they post promos, etc., would certainly suggest that they're not from Britain, because it's very much 2, 3, 4 a.m. in the morning. Our
I'm
time.
up at 4 in the morning on occasion. I'm up at 4 in the morning on occasion.
I mean, yeah, they might be insomniacs, so it's not beyond the realms. But that's my gathering. I could be wrong on that. Now, what I'm looking at is, and I think we've spoke to you about this before, is a lot of the feds out there, a lot of e-feds, especially the American ones and stuff, they are very heavy on sort of the role plays, like character progression, and sort of telling a story about themselves. Now, that style is very alien to what we have done in 6CWF. I mean, I think I've told you this before. We are one of the very few feds like that do back and forth promos. Like, they're not big. That's not a big style in e-fedding. Now, I've said to you before, I see the benefits, but also the negatives of back and forth. Like, I'm not a big back and forth guy, but I see the positives of it from time to time. Because you want to see how two guys gel.
And you're not a fan of it because you're busy writing the shows. You've also busy raising kids.
Yeah. And like I said to you last night, and we'll get on to that. That obviously a big issue for myself at the minute, and a reason that I'm kind of coming towards the back end of the JJ character is because I do struggle for that time to promo, and so I feel it's unfair on my opponents and stuff. But if you look back at me and my promos for over a decade, I'll do back and forths from time to time when I feel it is needed, but I don't. It's like I've said to you before. If you have a month or 2 month long feud, I don't think you need to be having back and forths every single week, because you're almost overkilling it. Like,
I find myself not
knowing what do you say? What do you say after like 4 weeks of going back and forth?
Yeah.
These guys, Enigma and Solomon. We'll start with Enigma. I think I understand what you're saying I think he's trying to tell a story right now about his background. He's trying to introduce the character. What we're doing with the story, where we've kind of bringing him into the forefront of the Damien Andrews story, is that hopefully from kind of this week, and it will be this week's show on Sunday, I'll kind of throw them in with someone else now, and then we'll see how they get on, because they haven't had that yet. Solomon did to a degree with Matt.
Mike Hill.
Yeah, Mike Hill. Who, welcome back. We're obviously very delighted to have Matt back. But yeah, I think, the time's come, not just for them. I say that with Angus Plague maybe as well. We'll get on to him, but I think all three of them now, it's probably reached a point where, we'll put them in a feud. I think Angus, I've already apologised to him via PM. It's not a deliberate thing, but I think it's time now to see, how they fare against an opponent, like a proper one-to-one battle.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to build up the character, but now it's a case of, okay, can you bring this across against somebody who will fire back at you?
Yeah, and I think that's what none of them have particularly had that. Angus probably should have had it already. Because he's been around.
Angus is ready for it. I think
He's 100% ready. Yeah, he is. He's 100% ready for it. But the other two as well, I think, if you're going to be involved in such a big storyline, which obviously they are now, they're going to be up against some of the top guys. So I think it's important now for them to have that.
Speaking of the characters, what happened? It's Killblade, isn't it? The other one,
Killbane and Diego Romero.
Killbane, sorry. Yeah, I mean, they seem to have gone a little bit quiet on the promo front, I believe.
Yeah, so Killbane is Blue Dragon's character. So obviously,
I thought they were. My mistake.
Yeah, so I think BD, obviously, it's Christmas again, hasn't it?
It's busy.
Yeah, it's New Year, it's stuff. He's got kids, he's got a family, I get that. Plus, it's not always easy when we've thrown him into this feud with Diego Romero, who's obviously gone quiet. Now, I did speak to Jeff. My name Jeff, obviously, every time. And that's the reason that I've kind of wrote him out. I said that he's been suspended for 30 days for a wellness violation, because he tells me he's coming back, right? And he again, America's a bit fucking up and down at the minute, innit? And he's had a lot going on. So he says he's coming back, but I can't just keep booking him in a feud where I think is he going to be there? Is he not? So,
yeah,
we took the decision. Obviously, Killbane won the match. Now we'll see what we're going to do with Killbane. If we do anything, depending on what BD wants to do with him.
I must admit, honestly, I thought Killbane was somebody completely new as well.
No, so Killbane was a character that BD introduced. It was about 2011 or something in 6CW when I was running it. I think he won a title. I didn't know it was him. He only told me this. It was last year. He was like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I was Killbane," and I was like, "What?" And never had any idea. I genuinely thought it was someone else, and it wasn't. And so we brought him back, and obviously because we had Diego Romero, and they were two sort of Mexican-based characters, I saw it as a chance to do a bit of lucha libre that we'd never done before. And I kind of enjoyed it. I enjoyed writing it, but unfortunately, it didn't have, because of lack of promos, etc. It was difficult to get it really off the ground.
Yeah, what about? I'm trying to think. I'm going to probably put my foot in my mouth again here. Hugo Browning?
Hugo Browning and Marty Helm. So obviously this turned into a major squash, didn't it, on the pay-per-view?
Yeah.
And I think it was the right thing to do. Hugo Browning obviously was very much giving off Logan Paul vibes, which was the intent if the character had stuck around. Now, all I'll say is that the character was somebody from the past. I'm not going to say who, because if they choose to come back at any point and we pick up with the character, there's a reason behind the storyline. So I don't want to give that away in case it ever. But basically, Hugo Brown and it not Hugo Brown in himself, but like the handler is somebody who's had a character before.
Another one of the Johnson clan on the back burner again.
It's nothing to do with me, but it's really weird, right? Because
I'm not saying it was you.
How this came about, right, was like I was on holiday in October in Menorca, right, and I was putting advertisements on Reddit trying to get some new characters, and I got this message, and it was like blah blah blah, and it was such and such, and I was like, it's really weird. And then they were on holiday in the same place, which was really weird.
That
and
is
anyways,
really weird.
Yeah, it's very So they signed up anyway, whatever, and I was quite I was looking forward to sort of progressing the character and kind of doing the sort of Logan Paul, with the entourage and all that, but it didn't work out. Obviously, Marty's back. Marty's been killing it recently. I've enjoyed the promos, so
yeah,
I think
as have I.
Yeah, I mean, we all love Marty, don't we? And when he's on it, he's really on it. So I think for me, it made sense. We don't have many squash matches on pay-per-view, but if you think about it in reality, like they do happen. And I just think instead of having a big, long, drawn-out battle, it's just like, right, just have him boot his head off, like get a win within a couple of seconds, and we move on.
Yeah.
I don't think there needed to be any more to that, really.
No, and then we've got another character departing, I believe. This is the Cider City Death match between Liam Wood and Thunder.
Yeah. Now, for
fun
me,
way to cap it off.
Go on, mate.
It was a fun way to cap it off.
I mean, for me personally, it's one of my favourite matches I maybe have ever wrote. I know the feedback was very, very high from it, and Liam himself was extremely pleased with it, and I'm glad about that, because these cinematic matches are a massive gamble. They can. You don't want to go too ludicrous with them. That's why I enjoyed this one, because it was quite simplistic in terms of it was very brutal, which it was supposed to be, but it wasn't like outrageous. It was two guys having it was a proper match, just in a back garden setting.
I'm just looking through the match right now. Can you give me a quick reminder of the rules of the match?
Yeah, so the rules are you've got a pinfall for a 5 count, and then you've got to keep them down for a 10 count. So it's a bit like a Texas death match in TNA.
The old school Texas death. Yeah, the old school Texas death matches.
Yeah. Which I think I remember. Chris Harris and James Storm was one of my favorites in TNA. It was a really good one.
Go back and watch the old Terry Funk ones. They are great.
Well, yeah. So there you go. So it's got it's got history, that them kind of contests, and obviously both characters being from Hereford, which I found out was known as the Cider City, which is why it was called such.
Okay.
Yes, kind of. Hands were tied in certain ways, because Thunder obviously came to me and said, "I'm not really feeling e-fedding." That's obviously I get that.
Yeah, I can get that as well. Everyone gets that from time to time.
we brought him back. Obviously, we were very happy to have him back, and he put his effort in, and he really tried to work through that block that he was having, and he just wasn't getting there. So, he said to me, I'd like to write the character out. He had some ideas. We put them ideas together. Liam put his ideas in, and what we came up with was what we came up with. And I think it did its job in terms of, so, in my personal opinion, the idea coming out of it was to, one, I wanted to pay respect to Thunder because I think he's a good character and he's a solid guy. So it wasn't about squashing him. I think I wanted to be respectful, even though we were writing him out. And at the same time, I think for Liam, it was important to kind of, make him look really good because Liam's been killing it. It was the end of his redemption arc. He spent almost 2 years now basically feuding with everyone from his past, and
Yeah.
this was the final showdown kind of thing, and he's sort of come out of it with his new persona, like the King of Violence and that, and I just think he's in, where I look at Liam right now is almost like in that CM Punk, like he's ended his blood feud like Punk did with Drew McIntyre and stuff like that, and he's ready to kind of move on now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I see Liam right now. Like, we know how good he is.
Personally, with what I've read, if that's Thunder not really getting it, Jesus Christ, I don't want to. No offense to him, I can't wait to see what he does when he really gets his fire really back under him. If you know what I mean. They've been knocking it out of the park with. It feels like Drew McIntyre and Sheamus, bang after bang after banger.
I agree with you. Like, I enjoyed their promos, and they obviously know each other in real life and they work really well together. I've like, the door's open, and I've told him this, and obviously we had, like, during that match we introduced like an old persona of his. I'm led to believe, with when he changes and he puts a mask on, and apparently this is an old character of his. So the idea being that the door was kind of left open, if he wants to come back, which obviously he's more than welcome to. Hopefully he does at some point.
I wonder if you can get them all. I wonder if you can get the pair of them on an episode of Hot Wings versus. Sorry, I saw the Sheamus and Drew McIntyre one recently, and that was pretty funny.
Just look, I'd like to have Thunder back at some point. But that's up to him. Like I said, and I understand some people just kind of lose their passion for this, which is understandable. Like, I can't beat anybody over the head for that. Like, that's a personal feeling.
I mean, to be honest, speaking on my personal thing, we've discussed basically if I ever decide to go, I want to go completely. And I think it's best to be safe. There is a rough idea planned. If I ever decide I'm completely utterly burnt out, I will not come back. And it's gonna be, it's unique to say the least.
Yeah.
It's a case of if I ever, I don't even know where I'm going with this at the minute. But it's just a case of there are obviously people we both want back.
Yeah.
But like I say, obviously Cassius is up. Cassius is one for both of us, obviously. That does bring up a point, though. Sorry for randomly changing.
Go for it, mate.
Why is he on the odds? We have an odds list.
Yeah.
Why is he on there?
Thing is, right, if you go on any betting app, website, I checked the odds for the Royal Rumble, a couple of days ago, which kind of probably gave me the idea for why I put that odds thread up. And there's names that you can get odds on to win the Rumble who aren't in WWE right now, like Brock Lesnar being one, for example. Brock Lesnar's something like 30-1 to win the Royal Rumble. Like, I don't know anything about him being in the Rumble this coming weekend, but
no, he could be a surprise entrant.
Yeah, exactly, and this is what I mean. Cassius C could be a surprise entrant in the Gateway.
The building worse than Hogan, but
you know, like Cassius C might be in the Gateway to Glory. Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh god, yeah, just well, obviously you're writing it.
I mean, I think
you just can't say.
Cassius is we've talked about it, haven't we? I think in every single podcast that we've done so far, he's like number one, isn't he? Everybody would like to see him come back. Do I think he'll ever come back? Personally, no. I think
we will not stop talking about him coming back until this podcast dies.
And I won't, and I'll continue to make it very clear that, I'd love to have him back. Like, I want him to come back. But the fact that he, as we've discussed, doesn't even acknowledge any of the messages that are sent to him leads me to believe that he doesn't want to come back.
Saying that this could be something ridiculously long term, where it's a case of oh god, do you remember when the Miz kept calling out John Cena?
Was that when he eventually came out?
It was the promo where basically goes, the end promo is basically, congratulations, you have your first main event match against me, with a big warm smile. Then he repeats it, and then he just goes, congratulations, you have your first main event match against me, and just turns and just glares at him. And the Miz gets destroyed in like 10 seconds, like 5-10 minutes at the pay-per-view itself. I can't remember the show. I can't remember. Was it Capital Carnage? It was it was a summary pay-per-view, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. But yeah, I'm not. Look, we've discussed it, and obviously we can continue to discuss it. And with a lot that's going on with storylines in the Fed at the minute, would now be a fantastic time for Cassius to come back. Yes, of course it would. But can't make the bloke come back. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't.
Yeah.
And
that was the Bash. Got it. Sorry.
What was it? The Bash.
Yeah, John Cena versus The Miz. The entire thing was the Bash. It was the main event of the Bash in 2009.
Actually, yeah. Well, I'd like to tell you that it's all some sort of long term, but like I said, he's just a bloke that I can't get in touch with him, so I can't have the discussion. I think for me, it's the kind of what if. So, like with certain people, they've responded to my messages one way or the other, and it's like, well, maybe in the future, or I've just got no interest in coming back, like, and that's fine. But with him, because he doesn't respond, I don't know what his thinking is. Like, I don't know what his mindset is with it. Like, it's never been explained to me, so I can't say a lot about it.
Well, I wish him regardless of how. I wish he was well. I wish him well anyway, regardless. I mean,
100%.
It's just kind of feels like we're just screaming at the wall, like we are the Saudi Arabians wanting Yokozuna back for the first crown jewel.
Oh yeah, look, if I had legit sort of oil money, I'd say name your price and bring yourself back and that.
No, you'd have to get in contact with him first, mate.
But that's what I'm saying. It's we've all done it. Like, I've messaged him obviously a lot on V2 or whatever. That's like my only real way of contact. I think I dropped him a message on Facebook a while back.
Yeah,
which he
Facebook's fine. Facebook's my only contact with him as well.
which he didn't respond to.
I don't even think he's read it.
Which is, it's not. I don't want to say like, oh, it's really frustrating, but sometimes because you know that there's another group, isn't there, that I'm still in on Facebook. Like I don't have a Facebook, but I've got the Messenger, and I'm still in a group. I can't remember which one it is. I still get notifications from it. Where everybody's talking about like go to wrestling events and stuff like that. All the guys.
Is it called Five Nerds Go Quiz Night Thursday?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's the one I'm in as well.
Yeah, and sometimes like I'll look in there and like I see that he's posted in there, and then I'm like,
posted in there,
huh? Yeah, I've seen messages from him in there. And then I'm just like, you know, he doesn't respond to any of my messages. So like I feel a bit like a jilted lover, do you know what I mean? Like I'm just dropping him lines and he's just pure ghosting me. So
found him. 9th of January is his last message.
It's exactly 9th of January. It's still fucking January now. So he's active in there. He's active in there, lad.
Sorry, we both sound like jilted fucking lovers now.
Look, mate, I don't care. I've said before, he is like a pinnacle, and that's not slighting anybody else because there's a lot. But like, I think he's because I'm kind of in that era at the minute of. I've said to you before, a lot of this, a reason that I started 6CWF back up, not just because I missed it, but because I wanted to kind of draw things to a proper close when the day comes, instead of it kind of being open-ended or like a shitty finish because we all just kind of drifted away. And I just feel like the Cassius thing, like it just needs a legit finish. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's why, another reason I'd like him to come back. But you know, like I said, that's he's his own bloke, isn't he? I like him. I've always think he's been a sound bloke. I've always had really good conversations with him. But you know, he doesn't want to come back. He doesn't want to come back.
Yeah, I literally just sent him a message saying, "Can you just read your PMs, please?"
Huh.
Anyway, back to CWF before we go on a tangent. I don't know, start making love songs or something just to get him back.
That's right. Let's talk about people who are actually here at the minute, then. Yeah.
We go on to the I want to call it a main event, but it's not. The 6CW World Championship, Blue Dragon versus Chris Patricks.
Yeah,
this was entertaining,
and it was supposed to. I think there was one question, wasn't there, that's been asked about the podcast. That I think it was Liam has asked about what do you think went well at World's End and what didn't. I think that's one of the questions that he asked. I'm sure it was. And if that is the case, I'm pretty sure I wrote that down. That was a question he asked yesterday. I think. Go on, mate.
No, I was about to say, let me quickly look it up.
Yeah. If you can, give me the exact wording of what he said, because I think it was something along those lines.
At World's End, what do you think went well and what do you think could have worked better?
Yeah. So, I think one of the... It was tough. I think we had this discussion during like the feedback of the pay-per-view was sort of match placement. Now, this match obviously screams main event. Like, there's no doubt about that. Blue Dragon and Chris Patrick's a main event stars. Obviously, Dicey and BD are fantastic. And so it's easily a main event, whether night 1, night 2, whatever. Like, but because of the finish and where we went with the finish, and obviously a controversial finish at that, and then obviously Logan's return and all that kind of stuff. I was in my head. I was like, "Go on."
Just for clarification's sake, Logan Kincaid did return and attack and attack the pair of them.
Yeah, so just for clarity for anybody that doesn't remember, basically really hard fought back and forth match. Both of them beat the shit out of each other. And then a controversial finish where Dragon pins Patrick's, but just as the 3 count is being completed, he taps out to the armbar.
Yeah.
Which is reminiscent, I guess, of like the angle taker finish.
Yeah, I know the one you mean.
Yeah, and stuff like that. And so then it was like, who is really the champion? And obviously we got Damien Andrews and Max involved, which was a precursor to the story that we're telling now, where they're kind of at war.
Yeah.
Then Logan comes back, probably one of the worst kept secrets, because everybody knew that he was going to come back at some point.
Just didn't know where.
Yeah, and obviously I spoke to Lee about it. Said, can we duck him out for a month or whatever? Which is why we brought Udo Berg back in, to give him something to work with. Plus, Berg's a good character, but we'll get on to that. So yeah, Logan's back. Obviously, does what Logan does. Batters everybody. Carnage. But for me, the reason that match was placed where it was again, I don't want to get back onto the old topic of I don't care about match placement, because I don't, and we've talked about that. But I don't think if you were going to have a 2-night event, given what I had with there was a segment that came after that, wasn't there, where I had Logan and Max, and Logan had attacked Max.
Looking this, I'm looking at day one now.
There's a segment that comes after this.
Yeah, I found it. Marty Helms saves Max.
Yeah, so for me, if Patrick's and Dragon had gone on last, you don't have that segment. Do you know, like, for me, that segment had to happen. And so, yes, you could have ended the show on that segment, I guess, but for me, that's why it was placed where it was. So then after that, we have, and we'll talk about the main event that we went on to have. But Patrick's and Dragon can main event. Obviously it's main event in next week's show. It's
honestly, sorry. Honestly, going back to this, I mean, you could honestly save that. I mean, you could have either match be on at the main event, but if you had this one at the main event, personally, just spitballing here, you'd have the segment with Max, end of next week's aftermath. That's why I'd place that. That's if that was the main event, because both the main event, both matches are absolute quality, and both of them honestly could have ended night one.
Yeah, and obviously we went with the decision that we went, and another reason behind that was I went with the classic send the fans home happy main event. Obviously it doesn't really matter because it's a fictional fed, but in my head I was like, let's have the big face win at the end of night one, which is what we obviously went with in the end, instead of the controversial. But then, I get it, because I think obviously ending night one with Logan Kincaid standing in the middle of the ring after he's fucking battered everybody is a great way to end a pay-per-view.
Yeah. I mean, it's God. I do not want your job in the future. Just deciding all this, because it's a case of,
Yeah, but then at the same time, I like to switch it up, right? It's not slight, because I know that BD, obviously, he's been knocking it out of the park since he got back. Dicey knocks it out of the park all the time. But I think Steele, the characters of Steele, Dicey, and Scott Harris in the main event, I kind of felt like if I was booking a Fed and I had a 2-night event, kind of feel like they deserve to have a main event under their belt. And that was my thinking, was that if that was me booking a legit Fed, like when they did the Usos versus Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens as main event of night one WrestleMania, like
Yeah, that was be 39, I think.
Yeah, and obviously they deserved it for their part in the storyline of like the bloodline and stuff like that. But then I felt for me that Jeff and Dicey are obviously in the middle of a storyline that we're telling. Scott Harris, I think, is one of the most over people on the roster. I just, Daniel, obviously with Revolution, and we'll get on to the issues with Revolution in a minute, but
yeah,
that could be the only sort of downside. I guess for some people that might not have been a main event match, but for me, I wasn't too fussed. I thought it was a decent way to end night one.
yeah.
But
Like,
go on,
go on. No,
I'll
you
let you
first.
go first before I say something else.
No, I interrupt you. Oh, I was just going to say, say, just currently reading over the ending of it now. It is just a case of Harris taking the win with needs more Harris, I believe.
Yeah.
And then it's just a case of I like the fact you basically here's I'm struggling to think here.
I just thought it was given that it was obviously a sort of cage cell match, whatever. Like, it was a very simplistically booked match. Like, and I think sometimes you need that after you've just had a mad main event sort of caliber match before, but it was very controversial with like the Logan and stuff. Like, sometimes you just need a very cut and dry match, like main event in terms of. So yes, it was in a cell, and yes, people are getting suplexed off a ladder and stuff, but it was very easy, sort of basic storytelling. Face team, heel team, they have a battle, but there's no controversy with the finish. It's just very cut and dry. Like, the faces just win it. Like, end of.
It is a feud. It is literally the typical feud ending result, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's how I kind of viewed it. Like, in terms of, we'll look at other things coming away from that, but let's just have a definitive. Because if Revolution win, obviously there are ways to tell that story, that Revolution. And I think when I read the predictions, a lot of people expected Revolution to win. They thought Dicey and Jeff would potentially turn on one another, which would be a way for them to win. But for me, I didn't personally think that was the correct way to book that, because I want Dicey and Jeff to look really strong before they fight each other. And their feud isn't, even though it's obviously laced with, a bit of mistrust and that, I don't want it to be, neither of them's a heel, so we don't want them really turning on one another.
Yeah.
So, and obviously Harris getting the win is a good placement for him, because, I think everybody loves the Scott Harris character, like, and I feel like if that was a legit Fed, he'd be really over. And so him winning that match also puts him in a good, like, obviously he's the reigning European champion, but it also puts him on a good platform heading into 2025 and whatever we may choose or not choose to do with him. But, like we've discussed
Yeah, I can
before,
understand that. I mean,
yeah, go on.
sorry. No,
No,
you go on.
go on, mate.
We are too polite for our own good, folks.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a case of I can see Scott Harris. I mean, actually, scratch that. I was about to say I can see Scott Harris winning a title, but then I just realised what you're doing.
What am I doing?
Oh, jumping ahead to the future, we've got the aftermath show after this covered. Basically, 4 titles are going to become 1.
All right, okay, yeah. So we'll obviously get onto that.
Yeah, let's finish night. Let's go on.
Yeah, do night 2. Let's do night 2.
Yeah, let's do night 2. And we open with Mike Hill versus Solomon the Void Noir.
Yeah, good opener. Good solid opener.
This is an interesting turn to take it. I mean, especially since you've done what basically you've reversed the positions on what you wanted to do on the Aftermath show with these two as well. Because normally you could see Mike challenging Solomon, but no, you've got basically Solomon going, right, I just want to kill him again.
Yeah, so here's a insight into a few things, okay? So, again, absolutely delighted to have Matt back. Like, I think we discussed on an earlier podcast when we talked about certain people coming back. Matt was mentioned, and, you know, we all love Matt. And
yeah,
obviously the Fed wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Matt. You know, he's put a lot of effort in over the years, and I'm just delighted to have him back. He's quality promoer, really, really quality guy. So yeah, happy to have him. And so obviously came back, and we had a few discussions about when he dropped off and what we did with the character. So I said to him that my belief is that around the last time he had a match was a hardcore match with Blue Dragon, and so we played it off that he'd got injured, and so now he's come back from a year-long injury. And has he quite got it, or has he not got it anymore? So that was the storyline that we were telling, and then obviously Solomon signed up, and you know, I wanted to get him involved in something, you know, because unlike Enigma, when there wasn't the chance to sort of pair him with anybody, unfortunately, when he signed up, Solomon signed up pretty much at exactly the same time that Matt did. So it was like, right, well, let's have a little look. Like, let's throw them together, see what happens. Telling the story of Mike Hill coming back from injury was a fairly easy way to give Solomon the win. That's not a knock on Solomon. I really like the character, but to sort of play off that Hill's got a bit of ring rust, etc. It gets Solomon on the board with a couple of really good wins over a former world champion. Blah blah blah. That's great. So he went 2-0, didn't he, over Mike? You know, the second one, Hill put on a really good performance at World's End. The manager gets involved. Solomon takes the win. So Mike looks strong, but he's taking a loss. Now that's fine. So for me, it was done. I was happy with that, like, because I'm thinking in my head, I've got idea for Solomon and Enigma to sort of pair up now and move on to the Damien Andrews story.
Then where did this idea of a third match come from?
This is what I will get onto. So, and then my plan with Matt was, with Mike Hill, is, you know, we'll get him a few wins back under his belt, and we'll start to build him as a legit threat in, say, like the gateway to glory, because at the end of the day, he's a former 3-time world champion, and you know, I want to get him back involved in some really good feuds. Anyway, on the morning of the last show, which was last week sometime, I can't remember what day it was because it was late, obviously, but
22nd of January.
Yeah, the guy that Solomon, his handler, messaged me, he dropped me a PM. He said something to do with he was finishing work, but he wanted to send something over for the show. Okay. So I was like, well, the show's going to be late anyway. Like, it's going up late tonight. I'm at work, blah, blah, blah. If you can get something over to me, get it over to me. If you can't, no bother. So anyway, I'm in the middle of posting the show, I think, and he drops me this segment. Okay. Now, here's where I'll say to people, and this isn't a slight, but so he drops me this message about this in-ring segment following his match with Tony Monk, right? Where he's already taken the win. This is just to fill anyone in if they don't remember. So then after the match, he batters Tony Monk even more, which
deservedly.
I don't mind, because obviously Tony Monk's my character, like, and he hasn't won a match yet. So that's kind of the point of him in a way. But he then gets on the mic and calls for a third match with Mike Hill inside Hell in a Cell, right? Now, I didn't write that segment. He wrote it and wanted me to put it in the show. Now, two things happened here. One, I was at work, so I was busy, and I didn't have time to sort of go back and forth with him about this segment. Okay, so I included it in the show because at the end of the day, he's obviously gone to some effort to write it, and I've got no problem with that. In fact, I welcome people to write segments, etc., for the shows. That's fine. But that segment is completely in conflict with not only what I have planned, but also I'm not going to book a Hell in a Cell match. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just not for like somebody's third match in a feud that is only just really started. That's just a personal opinion. Like, I'm not going to book that. And so, what I did was obviously about a little later in the show, when I align him with Damien Andrews and Mr. Enigma, I kind of used Damien Andrews to explain that to him in storyline terms that he can't get what he wants until he proves his loyalty to Damien Andrews.
Yeah.
That's how we explained it away. So what I'll say is to everybody, and I like to think, I had this discussion actually with Liam yesterday. I am very open-minded to everybody's ideas, and I welcome them because at the end of the day, they're your characters. You know, I've talked to you about this before. You know, I'm not saying I'm always going to use your ideas because I won't, but I will try my best. If you come to me, you know, and you say I'd like to do this or I'd like to see this implemented, if I can do it, I'll do it, right? And no bother whatsoever. Like, and if you want your character to have a certain way about them or be in a certain match, again, I will do my best. But at the same time, there's certain things I just can't do it, you know, or I won't do, you know, and I don't want to be like a dictator, but like I said, for me, Solomon and Mike Hill isn't a Hell in a Cell feud. Do you know, like I don't do matches like that as like almost a throwaway. Like a Hell in a Cell for me has to be like that has to be almost a feud ender or like a part of like a really serious feud.
Yeah,
That's just
I
my
completely
personal
get
opinion.
that.
Like you know that's I know WWE kind of overkilled it, didn't they, when they started booking like 4 on a pay-per-view or whatever. But for me,
Oh,
you know, Mick Foley and Triple H that's a Hell in a Cell feud. Shawn
correction, Cactus
Michaels,
Jack. Correction,
yeah,
Cactus Jack and Triple H.
yeah. That's a Hell in a Cell feud. Like there was so many matches, weren't there, in the last decade for me at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, which I was like, this isn't a Hell in a Cell feud. Like, why is that in the set? Why is that in the cell?
I think the last one that I would consider a proper Hell in a Cell feud, honestly, going back to 2003, and that's Kevin Nash v Triple H.
I just think they started killing it, didn't they? Like when they started doing like fucking everything inside the cell, and you know, it just was they've killed it. So, like, I'm not going to go off on Solomon. Like, he's a new guy, and I get it, and he wants to. You know, he has this idea of how he wants his character to be, and I've said to him like, we can get to that. You know, and you know, there's potential there for a Hell in a Cell match down the line, but another reason I tried to explain it away in the segment I had with Damien Andrews, and I think I had one with Mike Hill a little later on. Obviously, Mike Hill's just come back from a ACL injury that's kept him out for 12 months. Like, you're not going to book somebody in a LNSL match after they've just done 12 months on the sidelines with an ACL injury. Like, I just don't think that just, for me, you know, we have to sort of maintain a level of realism, and I just don't think that would happen.
Yeah. Let me just. I do have an example of me accidentally doing this as well.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Back when when Marky relaunched 6WE and I won the title on the first night, I wanted to put in a reason for why I was there. I basically came up with this idea of a contract. I basically came up with this idea of basically, I have this contract. You can't do sod all about it. And Marky goes, right, we're not going to use that. Only leaves the entire segment I've written in as is, which includes the segment with the contract. I'm just like, but yeah, you don't get everything. I mean, like I say, I've been champion. I think it's safe to say I'd earned that championship. I'd earned the championship at that point in terms of just longevity and all that. But even I don't get my own way. I mean, even with you, even when I suggest ideas to you, I don't. Like I say, if I write segments, I will always pass them to you first. Basically, going, okay, you've got a week or so. Look it through. If you like it, fine. If you don't, fine. But it's a case of, let me just put it bluntly, Solomon. If you do plan on trying that again, give him more time. I mean, yes, you may be short of time as well. I get that. But it's a case of don't expect all of your plans to be accepted straight away and successful.
Well, yeah. Look at the way that we've portrayed Solomon and Enigma. I genuinely believe they could probably be in some kind of Hell in a Cell match. Like, I think we could write that, and I think given the right feud with the right people, it's a done deal. But again, it's not a dictatorship because I'm very open-minded. A lot of the storylines that have happened over the last since we reopened in 2023 have probably had some input from outside or the people involved. So like, I'd like to think like Liam would back me up. You know, he's had a massive kind of input in his storylines for like the last 2 years. And that's grand, you know, work hand in hand with me and I'll, like you said, that I can't give you everything. Like, I just can't. It's not because I don't want to, but obviously I'm booking it. I've got a certain idea of what I want to do. Now that means when I get a fresh insight or a fresh pair of eyes and somebody says, well, I want to do, could we use this or could we go with this? Yeah, absolutely. You know, if it can be blended with where the storyline's going, absolutely. What I can't do, obviously, is like completely flip a plan that I've got on its head if it doesn't get us to where we need to be. So, you know, like I said, Mike Hill's just come back. I don't really want to feed him to Solomon inside a Hell in a Cell right now. Like, that day may come, you know. I think that feud is revisitable. You know, like I think we can go there down the line again at some point. But not right now. It's just not possible right now.
Yeah, and obviously the overall story takes precedence to your story. I mean, I've thrown ideas. I mean, I think I've thrown a couple of ideas to you in the past about suggestions and all that. And it's just like you've taken some in, you've not. Just, hey, I'm fine with it. I mean, yeah, it's nice to have an idea. It's nice to suggest an idea, but don't always expect them to be. Don't always expect them to always happen.
No, look, you know me. Like, you know, me and you probably discuss this a lot more than most other people in the Fed. But I am very much like, I'm a story guy, and sometimes that can go wrong. Like, I'll hold up my hands. It doesn't work perfectly every single time, and it has its limitations being very storyline driven. But at the same time, obviously, if I'm telling a story in my head, it's like, yeah, we've got an end point. and so parts of the journey can change, like they can, but it still has to make sense for me to be able to twist it back to the end point again. If something gets suggested that takes us way off course of the end point, then I might have to say we can't do that, because there's no way to get from that point again now to get to the end of where we want to be.
Damn, there goes my theories of time traveling, like Archibald Peck.
Well, I told you this when you suggested it, like, you're just absolutely never ever going to introduce time traveling into 6CWF.
I know,
Like,
I know. It's just I'm just having a little bit of fun.
no,
Because,
you are, but what I mean is, like, I'm open minded again, but and I've, like, my shows are quite, like, I think you could sort of, a lot of the time you could view it as a TV program, like a genuine sort of TV show, but yeah, I'd have to draw the line at shit like that.
so sorry, I've got time traveling wrestling on my mind now. God, I miss Shikara. Hey,
Where are we up to on this
where
show?
were we? We just talked about Michael and Solomon the Void Noir. Let's talk about my boys losing. Let's talk about my boys losing the tag team titles.
I feel like this devastated a lot of people.
Yes, including me.
And it was an extremely difficult decision.
For clarity's sake, this is the Brothers of Seduction losing to Genesis.
Yeah, it was a tough call. I think we've all kind of fallen in love with the brothers over the last 6 months or so. Marky and Liam have obviously done fantastic, and we've built them as legit. And obviously, I always come back to that. Like, it is legit, and they are.
God, and Liam is still hitting it out of the park with that Doctor's promo he did for this show.
Well, and that's what I mean. Like, we know we're going to get comedy with them, but we've combined it with, like, legitimacy, which I banged the drum about. But that's a big thing for me, and so they're a revelation. And I always talk about if it was a real Fed, and I think they'd be so over, like, mad over, like, with the crowd.
Absolutely.
I have no doubts about that whatsoever. But obviously, Genesis is Genesis, and I am biased when it comes to Genesis. Like, they're my creation, and I absolutely love them. I think that they're probably the best thing I've created in e-fedding. And Ed's done fantastic with this kind of new sort of imagining of them. And obviously we brought Udo Berg back, and he's 7'1" and he's 500 £. And obviously we introduced him only a couple of weeks before the pay-per-view, and I just wasn't, from a realism point of view, I just don't think it would have made sense to have the brothers win. Like, as much as everybody wanted them to, I just don't think it was possible.
I'd like to kind of remind you of St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Yeah, but it wasn't a cage match.
Vince McMahon. Yeah, and the Big Show screwed, and the Big Show screwed over Vince McMahon.
Yeah, and obviously there are ways and means of doing it, and I get that. And if I wanted to be super creative, like, there are ways and means of doing it, and I get that. And you have to see it from my perspective, writing it. Like, I was disappointed whilst writing it that they'd lost, because I enjoyed them, and I think they're a very, very good team. But I'm also a massive fan of Genesis, and for where, again, I don't want to be that guy of where the storyline's going, but, like, it makes sense on both fronts, and it's hard, obviously, because everybody doesn't see the picture of where things are going. But there are reasonings behind the result, not just about promos. You know, it's not just about who does better promos. It's where we're going.
And right now you've got Phil Collins destroying another band. Well done.
But you know, it's yeah, it's one of them, isn't it? Like I think I've talked before on these podcasts and stuff, and maybe I'm biased again, but the brothers are over, but like Genesis would be fucking super over as well, even though they're heels. Like Genesis is like DX in a way. Like DX meets the NWO kind of when it was cool, the NWO, and not shit. But like I just think they'd be, even as heels, they'd be over because it's Eddie Kent and it's Miss Jessica, and she's the one that everybody loves to hate.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously Eddie Kent is a massive star, and that's another thing you've got to factor in. Again, I'm telling a story, like a realistic story. The bloke's just spent 500 days plus as the 6WF World Heavyweight Champion. Like, he is a bad motherfucker. Like, you know, as good as the brothers have been, it's going to be tough to beat a guy who's got like the record world title reign in history.
Yeah, I can understand that from a creative standpoint. But like I say, it's just they're still they're my boys, much like Scott Harris is.
Yeah, you know, and I think they are and then we're not planning on. I don't want anyone to think, oh, because they've lost the titles now, like we'll forget them, because we won't. They're still going to figure in storylines and in going forward. It's just, I think, because, as I've said to you, we had this discussion about what I'm doing with the current feud and with Max and with Damien. It's important to start sort of realigning some of the pieces on the chessboard so that they look. And unfortunately, taking the belts off the brothers at this time helps me to sort of get prepared for what's coming.
Yeah, and I can understand that. I mean, it's the overall story taking over the temporary feel good of what we want.
Yeah, and that's just, unfortunately, sacrifice it. I think that's where we've changed as a Fed, and for better, for worse. You know, some people view it differently. But as I've discussed before, I think if you go back 10 years or longer, the Fed was very almost reactionary.
Yeah,
and I'm more like, I've got my story. I'm looking to where we want to be. Obviously, concentrate on the here and now, but I also have an idea of where I'd like things to look in 3 months. You know, I don't want to go too far into the future because things can change, but certainly 3 months. You know, sort of Night of Glory. I know where I want us to be by Night of Glory, and that's just how things work with my style.
Going back to since you mentioned Night of Glory, one of Liam's another one of Liam's questions: how locked in is that pay-per-view right now?
I'd say
Night of Glory is, bearing in mind Night of Glory is on the 16th of May.
Yep. So Night of Glory 10 is currently, I would say, 90% locked in. The remaining 10% is based purely off like that. We can't guarantee that everybody is going to be around. Like, so, you know, I may be forced into changing things. But if I'm not forced into changing things, I kind of know what we want to do at Night of Glory. Like,
yeah, I mean, I know we've brought this up before in building up to Night of Glory, but basically, do you go basically as soon as Night of Glory 10 is done? Do you basically go, okay, here's what I want to do to build up to Born in 513, which is 3 pay-per-views later.
Yeah. So to a degree, I would say we like to. I've started doing this thing, haven't I, where we do seasons. So Night of Glory to Night of Glory. So we're coming up now to the end of what would be our second season of 6CWF. And so Born in Fire is almost like the halfway point of the season. And I think that's about as far as you might have an idea in your head, like from Night of Glory to Night of Glory, what you would like to do. But I just think 12 months is just too far in the future to have anything concrete. So if we can go from May to December, again, it's pencil, isn't it? I can't pen it in. It's penciled in, but what we'd like to do.
Born in Fire is November.
All right. Okay. Well, November.
December's according to this, that's season's beatings. That's on New Year's Eve.
Yeah. I mean, again, you're laughing because you probably think that'll change, which it probably will. But that is meant to, yeah. So that's obviously an old 6CW pay-per-view that they used to have at Christmas time, and if we can get that done, that's one of my sort of changing. So I have four pay-per-views. Is it 4? Maybe 5 that we have to have. We have to have Day of Reckoning. We have to have Night of Glory. We have to have Born in Fire, and I think we have to have Beachfront Brawl. They're locked in every year, like. And I like to have Scars and Stripes in June, July time.
Yeah.
But if we can get any others in, they don't have to be. So we had at World's End this year, but we probably won't have at World's End next year. We're going to have seasons beatings if we can. If we can get it before the 1st of January, it'll be seasons beatings. If it comes after the 1st of January into 2026, we will change the pay-per-view name. But we'll decide on that when we get to it.
Yeah, December's been dismembered. It's time for New Year's Bash.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what. We'll sort of react to that when the time comes. But in terms of planning and that, so going off the questions that Liam asked, first he asked about. I'll just answer them and we'll get back onto the rundowns of the cards. But I think he asked about Day of Reckoning and the Gateway to Glory. And do I know who's going to win? And do I?
Sorry.
Go
I'll
on,
just
read the
question.
question.
I've got it right here. Without giving any spoilers away, how many characters have you had winning it in your head, or winning Gateway to Glory in your head, and how sure of yourself, right? How sure are you of yourself right now with who might get the win?
Okay, so to answer the first part of the question, I've probably had 7 maybe potential winners in different forms and ways of how we get to the point I want to get to at Night of Glory. Maybe more. 7 is just a rough figure because I think there are so many possibilities and so many options, which is why I said to you last night, I think it's quite a wide open gateway to glory, especially given, and we'll get onto it, but given the fact of what we're introducing and the way we're introducing it with the storyline and the Undisputed Championship, and given that, the people that are holding those titles currently may not be the people holding those titles following Day of Reckoning, means that, potentially the people holding world titles right now could end up in the Gateway to Glory. So, I think it's very, very sort of, it's jam-packed with talent. However, current plans and the way I want things to go, I am, again, 95% certain of who's going to win the Gateway to Glory. It's obviously not set in stone because things can change, and sometimes
spoiler inside. Sorry.
No, go on, mate.
Spoiler alert! It's not going to be me.
Well, that's your opinion. I can't tell you one way or the other. We were had this discussion last night about your perceived negativity, which, you know, at the end of the day, that's your choice to have that outlook of yourself and your character. I can't knock you on that. That's each to their own. But
Yeah,
I would, if I was you, you know, and I was, you know, if I was any character right now, you know, everyone's in with a shout, because we're just, anything can happen. We're kind of in a place right now where I'm trying to create the idea, and obviously this week's show hopefully will help with that. But we're trying to create the idea that you just don't know right now, because the whole
I
Fed's
think.
in kind of
Sorry.
turmoil. So, you know, crazy shit could happen.
We were just before we came on air, we were discussing the Rumble. It kind of feels like that in the situation because we were both discussing who we'd want to win, and it's
Yeah,
like we came up with like 5-6 guys for each of us that we
Yeah.
think, okay, they can win. Please go for it. And I think the only negative you had is you don't want John Cena to win.
no, I don't, and I don't want to be. Well, I'll be that guy. I'm not really arsed. Like, I'll be straight up. I'm not a mega John Cena fan. Like, I never have been, never will be. Like, whilst I accept his character and obviously being super over and stuff like that, and obviously he had 2000 and whatever year it was when he was rocking out like fucking Code Reds and that, you know, and he was fighting classics with AJ Styles and Kevin Owens and
Oh
stuff.
yeah, that
But
one. That would be
he's massively fucking overrated for me. Like, he's just not a very good in-ring performer. Like, if I look at 2007, etc., like his Reign of Doom or whatever, and outside of maybe his
So
matches with
2005 onwards.
yeah, like I just don't think he's as good as people make out. Like, so I don't want to see, and plus, even if he was in 2015 or whatever, or it's 2025, I want a little bit of, like I said, I like a bit of realism and legitimacy. The last couple of times I've seen him in the ring, like, he is nowhere near like as good as he was back then, and I don't think he was even that good back then. And whilst I agree, and we've talked about that, anybody with the correct storytelling can be perceived as a world champion, and I have no doubt he will win the 17th world title before December, you know, to break Ric Flair's record and kind of remove him from
Yeah.
that standing because of, you know, how he's perceived and stuff. But I don't want to, I can't get on board with John winning the Rumble and then headlining Mania against Cody Rhodes, who Cody's prime, like, or Gunther, who is prime, and Cena's just not. Like, you look at The Rock, yeah, and I'm a massive Rock guy, like always have been, and he's super in fucking shape, but like, he's still, for me, he's still believable. In terms of, you look at that tag match at WrestleMania last year that went like fucking 45 minutes or whatever. And fair enough, it was a tag match for a reason, to hide certain limitations that he's got. But I just don't see that in Cena anymore. Like, his match with Solo last year was dreadful. Like, his match with Austin Theory was dreadful at WrestleMania whenever that happened.
God, I watched that Theory match and I just went, oh dear God.
And that's what. So if you're expecting me to believe now, like 2 years on or whatever, that I can get behind him being booked as main event John Cena, like, personally, I can't. Like, I can't suspend my disbelief that much. But I know it's going to happen, and I know I'm just going to have to get on board with it, whether it's the Rumble or not. I know at some point this year he will be the world champion, whether it's for just a month or whatever. But it's obviously going to happen.
Let's circle back to the point I was initially trying to make. Was basically, you've got this year's Rumble. You've got a good 5-6 people that can win it.
Yeah.
Oh, it just feels like just the comparison with this and Gateway to Glory. I mean, it's just, well, that's the main comparison I was going to make.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, when I said 7, That's probably the least. I think there's probably more. I think you look at that lineup. If I was looking at that lineup and I didn't know what was going to happen, I think you can build a story around so many people on the roster winning the gateway to glory. Like, I genuinely do, and I'm not just saying that like to give people hope, but I think you look at the odds that are put up, like, and obviously they're just make believe odds or whatever, and obviously we've got Liam Wood as the betting favourite, and then we've got yourself who's like at evens, and we've got Jeff Steele, and they're just three names outside of then the people who like Chris Patrick's, or if Blue Dragon was to lose the world title, all of a sudden you'd be looking at him as one of the favourites, or Logan, or the Saint, or if JJ or Asa loses, then they're gonna, Eddie
Yeah.
Kent, or if Rex lost the world title, you're gonna put him right in the mixer, or, Dicey Riley. It's Night of Glory 10. It's Night of Glory 10. It's 6CW's flagship show. Dicey's probably the most synonymous name with Night of Glory and 6CW. So Dicey Riley being in the main event of that event, if we're talking about John Cena, if you want to draw comparisons, Dicey Riley main event in Night of Glory 10 for me would be a logical booking decision due to the fact that he's synonymous with 6CW. So that's what you can draw storylines around so many people.
And then, not to mention, you've probably got one or two. I'm just guessing here. You've probably got one or two surprises hidden up your sleeves for the Gateway to Glory match itself.
I mean, you're always going to. Your hope as a booker is, and every year you want to have a couple of surprises in the match. And that's going to be no different this year, whilst I can't guarantee it. We've got a few things lined up, and we're still trying to line a few more things up. And, spoiler, unspoiler alert, like, we have got a big name coming back. And that's, I'm not going to say any more than that, but we have got a legit big name coming back. And that's huge, and that'll set the cat amongst the pigeons, so to speak.
I think this big name will get everyone high.
But look, I'm not going to say anything.
Raster is the returning figure.
But all I'm saying is yeah. But what I'm saying is that yes, this is a time of year when, same with the Royal Rumble, obviously somebody can come in and they can win it, because that's what can happen with a match like that. If I can convince somebody of a massive stature to come back full time, legitimately from a storyline perspective, you can book someone to return and win that match. So not only, yes, are we talking about people who are in the Fed currently, but there are people outside or on the periphery that could come back and win it. And then there's outsiders as well. Like we were just saying there, you look at like a character like Scott Harris. Like for me, in a legitimate thread, coming off the back of winning the Lethal Lockdown match at World's End, and the way he's perceived and booked, for me, Scott Harris is a contender for the Gateway to Glory. I believe that, because I just think that's your booking. Angus Plague, like we've talked about, is, whilst yes, it might be a bit too early potentially, at the same time, I think if you look at the way we've booked him since he came in, he's a legitimate threat. He's certainly a legitimate threat for maybe like Final Four.
Yeah, you've got him down here for most eliminations.
Yeah,
as the 3-1 favorite.
And Daniel Riley. Daniel Riley is a massive. Daniel Riley obviously has just lost like a unification world title fight with Rex.
Spoilers.
Yeah, and obviously they've lost the again, spoilers. The follow up match. But at the same time, like, Daniel Riley is still fucking knocking it out the park. And whilst Revolution may have taken a hit and they're kind of like, where do they go from here? Daniel Riley is still one of the top guys. Like, and he could easily, like last year, he was number 30. And, you know, he's been a world champion for 5 months or whatever. You know, Daniel Riley's right in there. And there's other names. Like I said, if you look at our roster and it's stacked, and I think you can, like we keep going back to with storylines and how you write things, like if you write it in a certain way, you can tell it so that anybody could be a winner of this match. And I genuinely think that's where we're at. I think it's fairly. Some people might think it's obvious, and they're entitled to their opinion. Some people might think it's quite clear who's going to win. But for me, if I was not booking it, I would think it's up for grabs.
Yeah, I'd agree. It is up for grabs, and I honestly have no idea. Who's going to win. I mean, yes, I have a dour look on my own self, but that's my own doing. But it's a case of wherever you go, wherever you decide to go, we know something will come good of this. Unless like craziness happens. I mean, real life craziness, I should say.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Speaking of, sorry, going back to at World's End, we still have a few more matches to cover. Asa versus the Saint in the steel cage match.
Yeah. So what I was going to say earlier was when we were talking about night one and headline main event matches, this potentially could have been the main event, I think, of night one. I think with how the match ended, obviously Asa winning, sort of the big finish with the spear through the cage wall, and then him climbing the cage afterwards to celebrate in front of the fans, knowing, that he was going to potentially looking at a future world title shot. I think, again, this could have main evented for night one with that kind of symbolism. Plus, given the gravity, of the match itself, which was a massive match, and I don't want to make Ace's head swell too much, but obviously we've discussed and it's well recognised on V2 and stuff that he's been killing it for 6-7 months now.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any doubt about that. Like he's. I took a punt. Like I took a punt about this time, kind of last year, around that time. I took a punt on dropping him a message on Facebook and basically said to him, "Look, I've been using your character for the last 6 to 8 months as like a backstage character in 6CWF. I also had him in a match with Clark James, and I said to him, like, I've used this character. I have, come clean. I've used your character. This is where we're at with him. We're heading into Night of Glory, and I want to do 6-man tag, Coalition versus Exodus. Can I use Asa again for this? And would you have any interest in kind of reprising the role many years after? And the proof's in the pudding, because here he is, and I'm so glad that he decided to come back. And I think in a way, whilst I'm not taking the credit for it because it's all his work, but like I'm kind of glad because I remember joining 6WF 2008 and stuff, and obviously aligning with Saint, sort of with Dale behind the scenes, like being friends, exchanging messages and stuff, and then Asa, the same thing, and he was always busy with, I think he said like A levels or whatever, and uni and everything like that. But like I knew even then the kind of ability that he had, but I don't think it ever really got translated into promos, or he never really hit the heights that maybe he should have. And so I'm kind of glad, even if it is 15 years later, that he's come back and yeah, just showed everybody what he's all about.
Yeah.
You know,
Like I say,
go
it's definitely been a fun. Sorry, it's definitely been a fun time since he's come back. I mean, I can tell just from his way he's writing and all that he's really enjoying doing it.
100%. And I've got. He drops me messages. So whenever I have a message on Facebook Messenger, I always know that it's from him. And you know, he's always putting ideas forward. He's very, very creative with it. I like his train of thought. I like the way he sort of thinks about progressing the feuds, you know, and yeah, I think his enjoyment shows. And I think that's important, and that's what you can see with. It's not a slight on anybody because, like I said, we've all got real stuff going on in real, you know, in our personal lives. But I think you can always tell, can't you, when somebody's really feeling it, like they're really enjoying what they're doing. And right now, I would say with him, you definitely feel it.
Yeah,
You know, and his story has been a long process, and again, that's for me, that's fantastic in terms of like the level of trust. That's not me coming on here and saying like, oh, everybody just needs to trust me, but like he has shown trust in me in my creative process, and at times, you know, whether he admits it or not, he's probably thought he might have dropped the ball there, or you haven't quite hit it, but he still lets me carry on and get to where I think we need to go.
yeah, and I
Yeah,
kind of take the same view. I mean, I don't personally. I don't. I basically just go right. I've got an idea. If you want to roll with it, go with it. Go. But I trust where you're going with this. And literally, as soon as me and Asa saw this result come up, it's a case of right. We know what's happening with the match after, and it was kind of expected.
yeah, and it's tough, isn't it? Though I think at times when it comes to the booking of shows, it is tough
I get it is tough,
because
yes, and I kind of get. Oh, sorry.
no, but what I mean by that is like not only is it tough with the results, but sometimes it's hard because I don't like to just have twists for the sake of it. So sometimes it does become obvious. It's hard, but I think even if you watch WWE or AEW, like if you have a big match down the card that's going to have a connotation to a match going forward, unless they're going to pull a swerve. So, for example, if the face wins earlier in the show, the likelihood is that the heel character probably going to pick up the win later. But sometimes the obvious result isn't the worst result. Like it's just that's how it is. So yes,
Yeah,
I agree with you.
It's how the storyline has to progress.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly with you that with Asa obviously picking up the win here over Saint, the storyline does begin to point towards that. Obviously, JJ is going to beat Uryu, like because yes, obviously we can do Uryu and Asa, and there's you know there's a storyline you can build right there, but that isn't the story that we're telling right at this very minute. Like
Yeah,
I think
the storyline. Sorry,
no, go on, mate.
the storyline you're telling has always been for a while. Asa versus JJ 1-on-1.
Yeah, if that's like I say, keep coming back to if it's a real Fed, blah blah blah. That's the fight everyone wants to see. Like that's just how it is right now. You're not going to be happy, you know. Like when Daniel Bryan, you know, the fans hijacked the shows to get him in the main event of WrestleMania. Like, the fans are not going to be happy in 6CWF until you get that payoff, that Acer JJ one-on-one. Like, it has to happen. And the thing that what we're doing at the minute, and with so many sort of factors into this story, is that it paves the way for me for the future. So what I'm saying by that is, like, you and Acer have probably got a story to tell, but it isn't right now. Like, I think we can probably build a really good program down the line between yourself and Acer, even if it's like a friendly rivalry. But I think there is a story to tell. We can get there. Like, but everything has its time. Everything has its place. So right now,
sorry.
No, go on, mate.
I was going to say, Marky put it in a question eloquently, and I'm just laughing at it. Why do you keep giving Uryu hope? Why do you keep giving me false hope only to crush my dreams? I can really understand where you're coming from in terms of the storyline, but Marky's just being Marky.
See, it's hard because, well, I say hard, but Uryu is an easy character to sort of, no offense, but he's easy to sort of beat down. And I think the reason for that being is because he's such a babyface character that it's maybe it's cheap, right? But it's easy to kind of steal heat by doing stuff to Uryu because it's like, you know, he's the ultimate babyface. Like,
I'm the puppy every heel kicks.
Yeah, so like, you know, whipping you with a belt and stuff like that, like everyone's really upset by that. Whereas if you do that to Liam Wood, for example, you know, we portray Liam as a tweener. Some people are not going to be asked whether you do that to Liam or not because some people might think he deserves it. But Uryu's like, it's like Gazzy. Gazzy is another one who we used to batter all the time because it's like, it's just, that's how it would be in a show for me. Like, if you want your heels to get over, like, you just got to really beat the shit out of somebody like you.
Yeah, and I completely understand that. But going quickly back to Liam for a second, he'd probably say something like, "Thank you, sir. Can I have another?" Or say something like, "Is that all? Is all you've got?"
Yeah, exactly. Like, you pussy. Is that all you got? Like, but that's what I mean. Every character is different from that. But Liam, yeah, we'll get on to Liam. But Liam's a different kettle of fish altogether. For you, I think it's one of them where, obviously, then when we have the good moments and the payoff moments, and they will come, and they've come before, like whether that's a title win or whether that's like a big match win or whatever, I think it means more for your character when it happens, because this is what I was trying to get to you last night when we were discussing it. Like, yes, you probably take, percentage wise, you probably take more losses than most people, and you know, but that isn't a slight for me. That's, I don't want to like almost like try to make up for my book.
Let me put it this way. Let me just briefly summarize what me and you discussed last night. I take the view of basically, I said at most, I always have like a underdog view of myself in terms of life in general.
Yeah.
I'm basically a case of, okay, I'm at the bottom, I'm looking up. That's what I'm hopeful for. I did not, when I saw that match and the way it happened, I did not come in expecting to win. I came expecting a screwy finish and a draw at best. Am I mad that I lost? No. I know it's part of the story and part of the greater good. But I will, and I understand, yeah, for a hero to have a damn good payoff, it needs to basically come from a damn low place. And it's just a case of, well, like I say, I'm not mad at you for, like I say, I'm not upset at losing that match. Honestly, nothing at all. I mean, as soon as I saw, like, as soon as I saw the Ace results, like, and Ace results, yeah, makes sense. Makes absolute sense that it happens. It's not the right time for a swerve. It's always been building to Acer versus JJ, one-on-one, and I know that is going to kick ass.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is what I'm saying about...
Sorry. TLDR,
No,
JJ thinks JJ thinks I'm a depressing bastard because I take this worldview. I don't think I am.
I kind of get the view, mate. Like, I understand it, but that's not like my, obviously, because for me, this is just like a hobby and it's fun. So I don't want anyone to ever sort of negatively perceive themselves or whatever, like, because I think like you've got a lot of ability, and as I try to get across to you, unfortunately, sometimes when I've got faith in you, or like you're a person who I know I can rely on, it doesn't always mean that you're going to win. And I'm not saying you expect to, but what I'm trying to get across is like, so like take Saint for example. So I've always said that me and him are probably like, he's probably as close a thing that I've had to a friend over like this 17 years or whatever. But sometimes that means, whether rightly or wrongly, that I kind of take for granted that his character is going to be in a big feud, but he's not going to win. So like with the Acer feud, for example, I used Saint pretty much to get Acer over, like as a legitimate threat to me, and that was no slight on the Saint as a character because he's one of the best ever. Like, but sometimes, yeah, maybe I take liberties because I feel like me and you have a good relationship, and so sometimes I'm like, oh, I can put you in this feud, like, and it's a top feud, but you might not win it, but I know that you'll do a good job, and so it'll be a good feud. Um, and like, yes, that's not what everybody wants to hear all the time, and I get that. And like I said, I hold up my hands. Sometimes maybe I take the piss a little bit with people, but I think it's it's almost supposed to be an offhand compliment because I believe in you. Like I know I see you as a top guy. That doesn't mean you're always going to win, but like I'm always going to probably put you in good feuds because I feel like you can carry them, and I feel like you know it's going to come across well.
Yeah, and I completely understand that. I'm basically just I want to make the feud personally as best as possible. Doesn't care who I'm paired up with. I mean, as I told you last night, I've only had, in my personal opinion, I have screwed up two feuds in the past year. One of them was you, and that was not the fault of anything. It's just a case of my personal expectations. Like, damn it, I didn't have a knock it out of the park kind of promo where I just felt like I basically went, okay, here's a home run, try and catch it, bitch.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the other one was against Perfect Jack. That one I just completely like, okay, here's a softball. Oh, why have I dropped it?
I think you've also what I didn't say last night was as well that you've got to take into consideration, especially with that Jack feud, was that was very like sort of last minute in terms of that was a sort of thrown together feud.
Yeah,
It was I actually really liked it, and the pay per view match that we wrote was one of my favorites because it was simplistic booking, but it made sense. But it was very much like Jack was just coming off the Exodus disbanding and loss at Night of Glory, and I think we had a show, and then we had 4 shows to the next pay per view, and I don't think we started sort of going down the Jack Uryu route until like the second or third week. So we only had like 2-3 shows build up.
yeah. I'm not knocking the sorry, I'm not knocking the story build and all that. It's just a case of that's not what I'm getting at in terms of me fumbling it.
No, I
It's a
know what you're
case of
getting at, but,
yes,
but
everyone. Sorry.
what I'm saying about that is that obviously in certain feuds, and depending on who you're feuding with, it sometimes takes a little while to like find your groove. Like not everybody finds their groove immediately, and I think with that Jack one, like neither of you probably had a lot of time to find like your footing, because it was there and gone, wasn't it? It was like, here's a couple of weeks. This is what we're going to do. You've got basically maybe one proven grounds pretty much to go at it, and then we're going to do the pay-per-view feud. And then once it's done, it's done. Like, we didn't go anywhere after that. So whilst I get it, and you're one of them people that sort of internalizes, reflects, and maybe beats yourself up about it, I don't think personally there was enough time on that feud to be like, I would have been surprised if you hit a home run, because it was quick. It was like almost a one and done. And for me, what that did, I'll be honest, what that did for me, even in that short term, is I would like at some point to do that again, because I actually think the two characters worked really well together.
Yeah, like I say, everyone has their own. I mean, I suppose my internal, basically just like standard meter is a case of, right, okay, can I do this? Could I have done this any better? I mean, I've said it to you a couple of times. I think it was you and Eddie I've spoken to about this, basically saying, like, I've just been fumbling through like mental blocks.
Yeah,
I know. I definitely had one against you, and it just like I wasn't happy. I mean, I put something out. You said it was good, but I wasn't happy with it, and I didn't know how to improve it further.
And I think that's tough sometimes, isn't it? Because I think we can look for feedback or whatever, and I'm always happy to give that. And yes, I did like the promos that you did, but it's about yourself as well. So if you're not happy with it, it's like anything, isn't it? It's like anything in life. So I go to the gym. Sometimes I'm like, I feel like I've been killing it, but then I look at myself maybe in the mirror and I'm like, I'm not seeing anything here. Somebody says to me, "Oh, like you looking good, or you've lost weight or whatever," and I don't see it. And I think we can always be our own worst enemies from that perspective, because you could have 6 people telling you them promos were really good, but if you're not feeling it, like, it's hard to make you realize like whether it was or it wasn't. Now, we talked about it last night, and obviously go on record again. I think JJ now is a hard character to sort of go up against, and that's not. I don't mean that in an egotistical way. Like, I think for time wise that I've got, it makes it difficult for people, and I accept that, which again is another reason that we're kind of drawing him to an end and stuff, because obviously once upon a time I had a lot of time and we could go back and forth and we could do a lot of stuff, but I promo when I can, but it isn't. It's like this week I want to promo. I've got a promo in mind to do for Asa, not back and forth, but to give him a bit of fuel and stuff like that, and I have every intention of getting it done, but obviously I need to find the time to get it done, and I get that then it becomes hard for people from time to time to bounce off me.
I mean, also didn't help.
Go on, mate.
Sorry, but it also didn't help that the Christmas time, it's always going to be very tricky for everyone to promo as they want.
And it was, and again, going back to the Perfect Jack thing, is you have to also remember that this was the quickest turnaround that we've had for a pay-per-view. We had 3 shows from Born in Fire to At World's End. That was it. We've never done that before. Like, we just had 3 shows, and we had a massive gap from the last show, which was, I think, around the 20th of December, to the pay-per-view. Like you said, because it was Christmas and New Year and everything, and there was loads of people were ill. I was ill myself. There was loads going round. There was bugs. There was so much at that time of year that makes it even more difficult than it already is for myself, from my personal perspective. Like, I struggle with promo time anyway, but I had even less promo time than I usually would. So we didn't probably get to the level even I would have maybe liked to get to. And I get that. But again, this is what it comes down to: everybody's own personal expectations, or your standards, or how your style works. Like we've talked about right at the beginning of the podcast, like a guy like Enigma, he's churning out like these role plays, and for him, that's obviously his style. For you, you're one of the guys who's come up in 6WF, and we've built a strategy of kind of back and forths. That's how we do things. So I think when our guys don't get the back and forths as much, like I think that can have an adverse effect. Like for you, you probably wanted to have more of a back and forth, like between me and you, and it didn't obviously happen that way. And I get that. Like for me personally, that doesn't fuss me, but it does bother other people.
I mean, personally, I just like the first comment. Just thinking back about it, you basically said Max is not going to come out here, and Marky just went, "Okay, I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to go out to the ring."
No, he
Yeah,
fucking
I
sent
did
Percy
enjoy
out instead, didn't he?
Yeah, I did enjoy the feud. I did enjoy the feud with you. It's just a case of I wish I could have done a bit better for it. I mean, just personally.
I think again though, like, and I get it. I'm not going to tell you how to suck eggs, mate. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's your personal opinion. And you're obviously very entitled to it. I think, unfortunately, as well, it's almost you're a victim of what's going on with. So it's the bigger picture, the bigger story, isn't it? It's not that you're not.
Yeah.
We've introduced you to the story, and I actually think you're a pretty integral part to it, as we've started to sort of explore with like Clarissa and stuff like that. Last night's promo I really enjoyed that you did. But the JJ Asa story is kind of, like we said, that's the story. So whilst me and you did actually hit it off, and I think there's legs to it. Unfortunately, there's not enough time between where I want to get with JJ and Asa to keep our feud going the way it was.
Yeah, I can absolutely get that. Like I say, some stories have to go. Like I say, some stories obviously take priority. Asa v JJ is a priority storyline, not just because you're writing it, but it is one of those stories. It's just like, okay, this is what's happening at Day of Reckoning. Although stupid question, rather stupid question, which night is it going on?
Right. Okay. So here's where we get onto the story or the news that you obviously stumbled across that we haven't announced.
That nobody's noticed.
Nobody's noticed
me
it.
and
Like,
Liam.
nobody reads the schedule, do they? Nobody looks at it, even though I update it quite often. Nobody ever reads it. So yes, obviously the news being that Day of Reckoning will be over 3 days. And it's the first time we've ever done that, or like a 3-day pay-per-view. And there are reasonings behind it. One of which is, like I said, it's just a trial.
I mean, obviously, yeah. Gateway to Glory is probably going to be what, day 3?
Currently, as it stands, Gateway to Glory will be the final match on day 3. Yeah. And the reasoning behind that being that obviously we've got X amount of world title matches beforehand, as we talked about earlier. There are going to be people that don't come away from those matches as world champions, but we still want them to, potentially they're going to want to have their opportunity of still going to Night of Glory. So if we have that, say, go on the first night, yes, you can still build storylines around it, but
yeah, I absolutely agree. Like I say, Gateway to Glory should be the final match for this one. It is literally like the men's rumble being the last match on the card. Yeah. It should always be that.
Yeah. So one, it's a trial. We've never done it before. We've never done 3 days for a pay-per-view. May work, maybe shit. We'll see what happens. Like,
and as we discovered today, only New Japan has done that.
Yeah,
actually, they did it. They did it this year, 3 days in a row.
There you go. So they were already clocking my ideas, because that's actually schedule's been saying 3 days since last year, even though nobody's noticed. But yeah, so one, it's a trial. We'll see how it goes. 2, There is one other reason behind it. Like, there's a reason that I can't tell you yet because it's a storyline reason. That's actually something that was suggested to me by Acer. And we're going to use that.
Okay.
But that won't be revealed, I think, until probably the last show before Day of Reckoning, to be honest. It may even be after that. We might announce it sort of in the build up to the pay-per-view. But there's a reason that we have it 3 days, and that'll be one of them reasons will be revealed. And then the third reason being that as things currently stand, and this may shock everybody again, is there is actually only currently scheduled to be 6 matches over the course of 3 days. Okay.
What?
So there's only going to be 2 matches on each day. We're kind of doing WrestleMania 2, like we're doing like 3 cities or whatever.
You do realize WrestleMania 2 was considered quite shit.
Yeah, and that's what I'm happy to hold my hands up. Look, I think we did. There was a feedback thread a long time ago on one of the shows, and I mentioned something about taking these gambles, and I think it was Daniel Riley that said, and it stuck with me. He said, you know, he kind of enjoyed that I was taking risks that we hadn't seen before, kind of thing, because it makes it more interesting, and that stuck with me because I think we're kind of at a time now where we can do things a bit differently to how we've done them before, and there was a big talk, obviously, at World's End about what was main eventing and what shouldn't main event, and all stuff like that. So the reason behind why we're having 3 days and we're only having, as currently planned, 2 matches on each day is that every single match for me that is taking place at Day of Reckoning is a main event match. Like, every single one of them is worthy of being a main event. And so instead of just having 6 main events, one by the other, which I just think would be like, whilst you think that would be amazing, over a course of one night would just be a lot to take in.
I can understand that. I mean,
too much.
I suppose it's the case from the writing perspective. You've probably got like, okay, here's a nice end cap to end the day on. You've probably got 3 of them lined up.
That's what I mean. So like, it's almost like a chapter, like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. So, and it'll all play into one another. That's my thinking, is that 1 leads to 2, that leads into 3, and by the end of it, we've told like a really good story. Whereas if like we have all 6 on the same day, stuff's going to get lost. I think the effect of it is not going to be as great. That's just like I said, it's a personal opinion. We could all get to the end of the 3rd day of Day Reckoning and go, hopefully everyone will say, really enjoyed that pay-per-view, but let's never do 3 days again, right? In which case I'll go, that's grand, we won't do it again. I'm open to that, but for me, it's worth a punt. Now, I also accept that I keep talking, and I've talked today about having a level of realism. So currently, as things stand, it's down to be held at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff. Now, having 3 days at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, but only having 2 matches per day to sell out I think it's like a 75, 80,000 seat stadium for just 2 matches is probably a tough ask, which is why there are certain things that are going to happen between now and then. But I also do think it's doable, because I think as long as you know what you're getting, like, we're not going to be charging WrestleMania prices as a company for like 2 matches. Like, so one night at Day of Reckoning isn't going to be like 500 quid or whatever, because that's just ridiculous. Like, in fact, you probably get a deal for all 3 nights. Like, but so again, I think it's doable. and I know you've got to suspend disbelief for a little bit, but for the 6 matches, when they're all announced and you see them all lined up, I think it would be tough to order them. Like, if that was on one night. So obviously we actually already know 3 definitive matches, don't we, that are happening at Day of Reckoning. So we know we've got the Gateway to Glory. We know we're supposed to be getting JJ and Asa. And we know